outrage continues over the National MS Society. Founded 75 years ago by Sylvia Lowry, a woman with no scientific background, it gathered together 20 prominent research scientists and experts. It is what we would call a genuinely noble cause. Now, this prestigious reputation evaporated on January the 19th when a 90-year-old volunteer was forced to step aside after failing to comply with their diversity and inclusion policy. Fran Itkoff's 60 years of service to the organisation was terminated when she committed the cardinal sin of asking what pronouns were. Now, this modern obsession with pronouns has been around for about 5 seconds, but in that time, it has become a tool of oppression and intimidation. Look at what happened to the psychologist and conservative commentator Jordan Peterson, who has been fighting legal battles to reserve the right to ignore pronoun directives. But poor Fran, who has been around nearly as long as the Foundation, would certainly predate any of its woke staff writing these directives, but she was left heartbroken by the cruel decision. Now, Fran was sent a letter from a she/her pronoun that said, and I quote, "We appreciate your dedication and contribution as a self-help group leader," end quote. But then the letter went on to add, "It has come to our attention that there has been a failure to abide by our diversity, equity and inclusion guidelines during your time as a volunteer. We have made the difficult decision to have you step down from your volunteer position effective immediately," end quote. Now, they stressed that after being insulted, she was still welcome to come out and help the organisation. And that's where the cold-hearted social justice of the pronoun movement would have ended if it were not for the public outrage spearheaded by libs of TikTok on Twitter. The sheer volume of fury led to the organisation tweeting a statement. Note, they turned the comments off so that they couldn't have any public feedback. The organisation said that, quote, "We believe that our staff acted with the best intentions and did their best to navigate a challenging issue. As an organisation, we are in a continued conversation about assuring that our diversity, equity and inclusion policies evolve in service of our mission and will reach out to Fran in service of this goal," end quote. Now, I want everyone to keep in mind that we're not talking about bad behaviour, drug taking, assault, neglect, or any other of the myriad of things such a message would normally accompany. Fran, a 90-year-old, asked what pronouns were. Now, this comment from them led to a fresh wave of anger, and finally, a few days later, the organisation issued an apology. Now, note that their tweet is being ratioed to hell, and the reason will become very obvious in a minute. The statement from the Society starts out well, saying that it apologises to our long-time dedicated volunteer, Fran, adding that they realise their decision was a mistake and that we should have had more conversations with Fran before making this decision. Now, hang on a second. More conversations? They go on, quote, "We should have spent more time with Fran to help her understand why, as an organisation, we are dedicated to building a diverse and inclusive movement where everyone has equitable access to care, connections and support they need to live their best lives," end quote. And then they ramble on about the spirit of continuous learning and make sure the team members are equipped on the best way to implement all of our policies, end quote. It's the sort of twaddle Chairman Mao and Stalin would sit around the fire and giggle about. As one person said on Twitter, "A complete non-apology, you should be ashamed of yourselves." Another added, "You still don't get it. Fran was not the problem. Her failure to understand the policy was not the problem. The policy is trash," end quote. And so there we have it. A 90-year-old who dedicated 60 years in service to a charity was turfed out to protect the feelings of the pronoun agenda, and instead of apologising properly to Fran, they apologised for failing to indoctrinate her in their new policy. Now, we need to pay attention to stories like Fran's, because this isn't an event confined to a single charity. It is a story that encompasses the great moral struggle of our age, that fake virtue signalling will triumph over hard work and achievement. It's an endless ideology that preaches inclusion while practicing discrimination along the narrow lines of politics. Now, if we cannot respect and honour people like Fran, our civilization is in real trouble. And as a final note, we learned today that the person who sent the original email to Fran telling her she was no longer needed, well, they've quietly resigned.